Hello and welcome to my video. This is a very long video. I hope you can stay awake. It goes on for I think almost 2 hours, so it's quite long. I think it's the longest video I've ever put up. Anyway, I'm glad you're here, and very briefly, this was videoed at my August venue, which was almost completely wiped out by the COVID-19 situation. Originally 11 people were due to come here, but one made it. So thank you, Petra, from coming from Sweden. It was a good week, it was a laugh, and you are a very good painter. It was a pleasure to meet you. So here we are. Now, one thing I must say, there is a point in the video, I think about 2/3 of the way through, where I start winding the thing up and saying, thank you for watching, do this, do that, click on this, click, you know, that sort of stuff. I peaked too soon. I thought the video was ending because I sort of, it's just the way I am. And then I decided, no, I needed to do a little bit more on the painting. So you get me saying goodbye twice. So I'll see you in a few seconds, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Bye. I say goodbye again. Okay, here we go. First thing is you need to sand your board, and I recommend that you wear a mask. So because plywood, when you sand it, does make a lot of dust, and it will make you cough. Makes me cough anyway. So a mask. There's my sander. You can use any type of sander. I wouldn't recommend a belt sander. One of these, well, I call it a shuddering sander, because it seems to shudder. You can get circular ones that rotate, all kinds, but this sort of works best for me. And you'll notice possibly that in the corner here there are labels with barcodes. Now, this is the only time that I use turpentine in anything, and that is just a few drops on each of these labels. Let it soak in, and they peel off quite easily. Once they've peeled off, I give them a wipe with a cloth, and then I sand over it just to get any residue of the glue off. So that's that. Let me think, what else can I tell you? The board, now in France, it's called contreplaque, which is plywood, and it's okumi. And okumi, I think, is a beech tree. I'm not sure, I'll check that. So I'll get my mask on, and I'll get, well, I won't put the mask on yet, actually. What I'll do is I'll get rid of these labels. So let's do that. So just a few drops. Because that'll spread completely over the label. All you need to do really is just leave it for about a minute, and it'll soak right through. Then I get a cutting knife, a craft knife, like this, and I just lift the label off. Whatever you do, don't wet it, don't put water on it. Plywood doesn't particularly like water, and you need to melt the spirit-based gum that they use to stick the label on, and it should just peel off, just like that. So here's the other one. That's not completely soaked all over, so I'll just spread the turpentine. Well, it's actually not turpentine, it's white spirit, but smells the same, and it's just as bad for you. Just a little bit more on that corner. And that side. I'm trying to use the minimum amount of this stuff because I want it to, once I've got the label off, I want to get it off the board completely. Okay. And hopefully this one should just lift off now. It doesn't always. So it's more satisfying when it comes off in one go. A bit like stripping wallpaper. Yeah, this is going to put up a bit of a fight here, I think. If you don't get all the glue off when you're peeling it like this, or even the paper, the sander will usually shift it. So, there we go. There's a little bit just here, so I think I can probably just scrape that. You need to be careful when you do this so that you don't damage the board. Okay, so that's the labels off. Next thing I'll do is just give them a wipe with a cloth, which just happens to be an old shirt of mine. I have a lot of old shirts that end up as rags, so I'm just going to take the residue off there. That's it. Okay, so I'm ready to sand. Just going to put my mask on, and I'll be turning the sound off while this is going on, because it's not a pleasant sound. So mask on. I also recommend eye protectors because of the dust that gets blown around. It can irritate your eyes, and I've just had to go and rinse my eyes out because these certainly didn't do the job, my normal glasses. So do look after your eyes, obviously. Gesso. Okay, this is gesso. Now this is standard gesso. It's basically acrylic paint. It's a primer. Now you could use ordinary primer for woodwork, it wouldn't matter, it'd just take a lot longer to dry, I think. This stuff takes about an hour depending on the conditions, so this is what I recommend. And any old brush will do. This just happens to be a hardware store brush, 50mm, and that's all you need. I'm not going to show all of this because it is boring, and don't worry about the direction of your brush strokes. You can go all over the place with this. You don't have to make it look like canvas. The whole point of this is painting on wood is that you are not painting on canvas, so don't try to create a canvas effect with your brush strokes. In other words, some people will paint this way, let it dry, and then paint this way. You won't get a canvas effect, you'll just get brush strokes. So it doesn't matter where they go because it'll be sanded several times before we get to the end. This is just the first coat, obviously, and once that's dry, I'll sand it again very lightly. The same sander, same type of grit, which is 120 grit, for those who know what I'm talking about. It's not too rough, not too fine. You don't want it too rough to start with because well, you don't want to scratch the board, frankly. You want it to be as smooth as possible. So there we are. I've started, and I'll stop there because really you will fall asleep if I continue. So don't forget, one coat, let it dry. When it's completely dry, sand it again. Brush off the dust. Paint it again. Let that dry. Sand it again, and then the final coat. Now you can sand the final coat if you want. I don't usually, because by then the surface is pretty smooth, and the odd brush mark in the gesso doesn't really matter. I think it adds something to the painting, frankly. So, okay, so the next stage will be me painting, and that will be in the blink of an eye for you, but several hours from now for me. So this is the sort of result you can get after you paint your picture with sap green and red ochre. The colours I've used on this are very limited. In fact, I've just told you them. Sap green, red ochre, oh, and a little bit of Payne's grey. And on another painting in a moment, I'll show you how to sort out the sky. And this is a seascape, this next one, because so many people have asked to see seascapes. Okay, especially for all you people who want a seascape. Now, this, you're not going to see this from the beginning, but it's a seascape I painted 4 or 5 years ago, and it's got a bit of damage on it. You may be able to see, I'm not sure, but there is actually a scrape right down here, and there are spots all over it. And I don't know whether it's coffee, or splatter from another painting that I did too close to it. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm going to completely revise the sea and the sky. So here we are then. I'm going to aim for drama on this picture rather than accuracy of the subject. So, and also to give you an idea of how you don't need to use turpentine, this is a brush I used yesterday on this picture, and as you can see it contained green, Payne's grey, white, yellow ochre, and possibly a bit of, oh yes, and royal blue. So this brush has not been washed in turpentine. This has just been wiped with paper towel, and for paper towel I use one of these. So as you can see, it's a big roll of paper. So here we are. This is my palette for the palette freaks out there. Nothing special, plastic plate, and on here I've got Payne's grey, royal blue, phthalo blue, and red ochre. Although I won't use red ochre actually on the sea because it just doesn't seem to be the sort of colour that you would want to use. And the oil I'm using is this. It's made by Le Franc-Bourgeois, which sounds French, doesn't it? So it is. And this is just clarified linseed oil with no drying agent in it. Now I can add a drying agent if I want to, but I'm not going to because I want this to dry reasonably slowly. So if I can get through the child-proof lock, I did, and just put a lump of that on the palette. And as you can see, I hope, you can see the amount of oil that I put on there. It's running around the plate, quite a lot. Lots of colours on this brush, and the first thing I'm going to do is just add a horizon. Now it doesn't have to be completely straight at the moment. I think I got lucky there, that's reasonably straight. All I want to do is just get some colour on the painting. And you'll notice that when I do this, because there's a bit of royal blue actually on the brush, it comes out. Don't be afraid of that, because actually you can it can enhance your painting. And you can also see here that I've got some blue actually on the horizon. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see that. So when you have little things like that happening, don't worry about it, because it can actually, as I said, enhance your painting and just make it a little bit more interesting. And it's called patina. So down here we've got waves. I'll show you. I'll be doing these waves down here a little bit more, so I'll show you how to do those. There's none of this sort of curling over type wave. This isn't that kind of sea. This is quite a calm but dangerous sea. I see the sea is a little bit dangerous because I can't swim. Never been able to swim. I nearly drowned when I was young, and that sort of put me off. So my seas are all about the feeling I get from the sea, not necessarily what the sea looks like. Because if I wanted to paint the sea exactly as you would see sea, this is going to be tricky saying sea all the way through this, but I'm never going to paint just a blue sea with white waves crashing on a pretty little beach, because I'm English and the sort of beaches we have aren't really like that. They're a little bit, well, different. So I'm going to go for a stormy, slightly threatening sky, so I'm going to put a little bit of threat. A little bit of threat up there in the sky. And then I'm going to, I've used up quite a lot of the paint on the brush. So now I know that if I come down to the sea here and just go back and forth, I can blur the line between the sky and the sea. Which is something that quite a lot of artists do, because I actually think they don't want to try and get a hard line, because it's not easy. I'm not saying that people like Turner deliberately did that to make his life easier, because all his work was totally about drama, and it does evoke a more powerful feeling when you don't just copy nature as it really is. So I'm going to put a nice cloud formation here. As you can probably see, there's lots of brush marks and scrape marks and stuff here. Doesn't matter. That will all go at the sweep of this brush here, which is my magic cloud brush, and we'll come to that in a minute. As you may have noticed there, I'm a frustrated juggler, and the thing that mainly stopped me from being a juggler is that I can't juggle. Now then, I'm going to put some dark up here, so I'm going to try and keep a concentration of light through there, a little bit of light on the horizon, and then I think very dark next to the cliff. That will bring the cliff forward a little bit and make it just a little bit more intense. A lot of the beach down here, if you can call it a beach, I will leave. I will show you how to put the breakers, the waves, along here very quickly with a palette knife. But this is something I want to finish off quite quickly, because I'm actually I'm at my August venue, and I am with the one brave student who actually got here. It's a shame the other 10 people couldn't make it, but I understand that the situation on the planet at the moment makes things very difficult, and hopefully I'll see you all next year. So this will give you a taste of what you missed, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so a nice bit of a bit more threat up there. On my last video, you may have heard me mention that a lot of things in my paintings are just blobs, and I made a little joke about how I studied blobology at college. Of course, it was a joke. They didn't actually have a blobology lesson, but this is threatology, and we certainly did learn about threatology. By that I mean, if you didn't do the work right and you weren't keeping up with everything, they threatened you with kicking you out. So that was the threatology. So there we are, nice bit of dark sky at the top. That'll bring the sky over your head. I think I might even put a little bit up here, so we just have a light channel through there, maybe, and down that way. We'll come to that in a second. And I'm going to just put some darkness behind this cliff. I'll be working on the cliff again in a second, just to sort of re-establish some of the shapes. And over here and up to the edge of the cliff. This is the I'm not being precise method, because there's no point. I could be precise if I wanted, but really, I'm not kidding. When I say there's no point, there isn't, because it will all that edge there, the top edge of the cliff and the facing edge of the cliff here, that'll change. So really, all I'm doing is getting the feeling working. There we are. It's probably enough. Looks like a complete mess, which is exactly what I want. Now, before I put the clouds on, I'm going to show you. First of all, with this brush, I use this for putting white clouds on, or whatever colour I choose, but I also use it for getting rid of brush marks. So, and before I continue, I'm using this side of the brush and this side of the brush, not the tip. This has got a little bit of pale blue on it left over from yesterday, and that is really of no concern. If it is, that's the way that you wipe it, like so. Just push the paint onto a piece of paper. And even though there is paint there, as I said, it won't matter. So this is how to get rid of the blush marks, or brush marks. You can choose. Now, some of the marks that were on the picture are still showing through, but I'll get rid of those in a moment. One of the things is about painting is relax. So when I say don't worry about things like this, these marks showing through, I'll try and zoom in on this area in a moment so that you can see what I'm talking about. Yes, the reason I say don't worry is because where will that get you? If you worry, what's it going to do? It's going to slow you down, and it's going to make you too hesitant in what you're doing. If you just keep working at it, and instead of worrying, look for a resolution. It's much more productive. And if you get a hair on a painting, don't fiddle around with a palette knife, just use the corner of the brush, touch the painting, and you'll find that the hair will come off and probably fall back on my palette so that I can put it on again later. That does happen. Oh, no, it's still there. So just a touch, and there's the hair. There we go. So some people, when they are doing this, they may think, well, I've got to get that line straight, and they'll possibly get a large straight edge along there with a ruler or a piece of wood, and they'll draw a line, which is, if you want to do that, fine, but really you don't need to. Because so long as some of it is straight, as long as you actually say, well, this is a horizon. We all know horizons are actually straight, although there is a slight curve because of the shape of the planet. But if you show enough to show that it's the horizon, the sea over here can blend with the sky, and there's enough suggestion in this area to show you that that is the horizon line. And it's all about priorities. You've got to prioritize certain bits of the painting and just keep it fluid. Now you can see I'm pulling the colour down over these cliffs. Doesn't matter. It's my favourite saying that. It doesn't matter. There are things in life that matter much more. I've got a really stubborn hair there. Now if you watch this, again I will zoom in on this area. If there's a stubborn hair and you end up sort of doing something like that to get the hair off, it leaves an unsightly mark. And here we go again. It doesn't matter, because with this brush you just do that a couple of times and the mark is gone. Now I'm going to add some white to the sky. I'm going to come over to this bit in a few moments because I'm trying to do this painting as fast as possible, because the next painting I do is going to be a demo from start to end for my student, who's standing here very patiently watching me. And so let's get some white and work on the sky. Right, so the sky, as I said, there are some terrible marks on there. The sky that I'm going to put over the top using white, and possibly, I don't know, I bought this with me today. This is Japanese red, which again a lot of people have asked about, particularly in America. It's quite hard to get over there. Now there are certain chemicals in the paint, and the only thing I can tell you about this is that it contains PR4. Now I know as much about PR4 as I do about brain surgery. So it may be useful information to some people, but it's called Japanese red. You could make this, I guess, with any other red, like cadmium, and just add a little bit of white to it, maybe a tiny bit, and I really mean small amount of yellow, not too much, because you don't want to go too close to orange. But this is a really good colour straight out of the tube. I'll put a link in the box below about where you can get this. I'll tell you as well, actually, you can get it, there's a shop in London called Jackson's Art Supplies. Now I don't get paid for telling you this, I'm only telling you because it's going to be useful for you. I don't do any paid promotion on my videos yet, maybe one day. But you can buy it online. Now you can get it in France also if you go to Cultura. And Cultura is a string of shops around France, but also I think in other countries too. So you may be able to find a Cultura in your country. If you're English and you don't speak much French, I find their website quite difficult to navigate, and I'm not the best French speaker on the planet. So again, and I'll put a link in the description for that too. Whoops, I opened the wrong bottle. Let's try the other bottle again. I'm only putting a tiny amount of oil in this because I don't want it too runny. And a palette knife. You don't need lots of fancy palette knives. You can get these all kinds of shapes, but I've really only used two. That's those two. Get the light on them so you can see. You can buy them, as I said, with quite elaborate shapes. Some of them look like bricklayers' trowels, but really it isn't the shape of the tool, it's how you use the tool. That's the important thing. And I'm going to add a bit of white to the plate where I've got the Japanese red. When I say a bit of white, a few people have mentioned this. They say, how much white did you use? How much red did you use? Well, for what I'm going to be doing, I've got that much on the palette. You can see, that's the white down there, obviously. It's just making sure that you can actually make it out. Tiny little bit of oil sloshing around here, not much. Just enough to loosen the colours a little bit, because I want a sort of slightly pink look to the sky. Quite a lot of white. Okay. So I'm ending up with this sort of colour here. It's a very, very delicate pink. In fact, I'm going to make it even more delicate. Okay, so let's see what we can do. How's that for precise? Right, let's have a little bit of light above the sea. I may have to get in the way briefly to do this. I apologise for the back of my head. I think I might have a light horizon approximately there, and then just push that up a little bit. And always remember, your clouds must go off the edge of the painting. I'm always conscious of repeating stuff, because I don't want to get boring. But people tell me on YouTube, don't worry about it, keep repeating, because that's how I'm going to learn what you're doing. So I'm going to repeat this again. And I'll probably repeat it on the next painting I do, which will be in about 10 minutes, perhaps 10 or 15 minutes by the time I've figured out what I'm doing here. And that is, clouds have a life outside your painting. And if you make the clouds comfortably fit your picture, it will look strange. It won't look real, because when you look out the window, the clouds don't conveniently fit in your window. They go off the edge. And that is one of the things. It may seem like a small thing, but let me just give you an idea of what I'm talking about. If I had a cloud here and it just stopped there, okay, pretty weird. And then if I had another one over here and it stopped there, again, it just doesn't seem right. I know it's just a blob at the moment, but as soon as you do this, it makes it look as though it's actually just coming into your picture. Now, I've put this mess on here, and I'm going to try and make it into a cloud. So the first thing I'm going to do is undo these terrible mistakes I've made here, take the clouds off the edge. And the other thing is, you may notice, I'm sure you will, because I think you're all very observant people out there, that I'm not really making clouds. I'm just putting down colour where the clouds will be. The thing that makes the clouds is the other part of my technique, which is the use of the giant brush. attempt at juggling number 2. This one here. Now, this is such a simple technique. I'm sure they don't, well, no, I'm not sure. I'm surprised they don't teach it in school. Just imagine if you had a whole class full of children and they were shown this method of painting. How many of them would become artists, and how many would become very successful artists? Because they're not being programmed with the old adage that leaves are green, the grass is green, the trunk of a tree is brown, the sky is blue. Well, I know I've got blue here, but it won't be blue in a minute. It'll be blue plus a lot of other colours. But imagine just how freeing it would be for people to be able to do a sky as quickly as that. Just a bit on this side here. Haven't done that. Whoops, haven't done that over there yet. Does make it all seem possibly too easy, doesn't it? So, I have to mention a painting I did a few years ago now, and I painted a sky and I had all kinds of colours in it. Somebody put a comment on my YouTube saying, this is rubbish, the sky can't possibly be that colour, the sky is blue and the clouds are white. I mean, my immediate reaction was, well, you're clearly not paying attention. It's best not to get into too much of a conversation with some people, because some people are just trying to be rude and, I don't know, maybe they're after attention, but I suggested to the person that they should go out and look at the sky, either early in the morning or in the evening, and tell me whether it's just blue and blue sky with white clouds, because it isn't. It'll have all kinds of colours, depending on the dust in the atmosphere, colour, the way the sun is reflecting off certain things, all kinds of factors, and which is why when I paint a sky like this, I will suddenly be completely unpredictable and do something like this. This is Japanese red. Now you may think, well, that's a very nice, fluffy, slightly threatening sky. It's just not threatening enough for me. So what should we do? We could have later a bit of red reflecting on the cliffs here, but for that to happen we need a bit of red in the sky. So I'm just going to put something along here, like that. Doesn't matter that it goes over the cliff, because that's what this is for. A little bit more red. Right up behind it. A little bit more red. Didn't have enough, a little bit more. So a nice lump of red there. Okay, so I'm going over the cliffs. Doesn't matter, it's not the end of the world, it's just a painting. Okay. Back to this brush. And all I'm going to do is just pull that across a few times, like so. And then push it up. And you may wonder why I did that. I'm wondering too. Actually, no, the real reason I did that is because I can. I treat paintings as fun because I like to see the effects that I'll get. And I think that's getting interesting now. Okay, just a little hint of something in the sky. If you've got that there, you're going to have a little bit of bounce up here. So I'm just going to add a few bits there. I'm going to ruin my perfect sky, because in reality nothing is ruined, it's changed or improved. That's the way I tend to see things. Okay, so that's probably enough there. I'm going to ask my student if she wants to be videoed while she paints. And she's looking at me now, wondering. I'm not sure if that was a nod, possibly. Oh, it's a sideways head wobble, which usually means we'll see. Okay. So again, the big brush. I won't attempt at juggling it this time because I know I'll drop it. And I'm just going to add my slightly mysterious. Oh, and when I go on to the cliffs in a minute and the water again, that doesn't mean to say that the sky is finished. I may fiddle with this at the end of the day, just to break up the video a bit for you, so that you get to see all kinds of things on this one. Somebody asked me to do a video from start to finish. Now I have videoed, I think it was the day before yesterday or yesterday, I videoed how I prepare a board, and I'll be inserting that soon, unless of course I've already inserted it at the beginning. I'm not sure yet. I might leave that to the end. But if you want, is there anything particular you want to know? Anything that you think I'm missing here? Don't be afraid to ask. I'll see what I can do. Okay, so I'm going to stop on the sky there for the moment. Although, having said that, I'm just checking in the camera, and I'm finding some of these here a little bit too much. So just knock that back just a little bit. Okay, that's good. Now then, so the cliffs. How many people are looking at this and saying, "What an idiot! He's painted over the cliff." Well, here we go. There's the cliff coming back. With a bit of red on it. I'll make that. In fact, I might spread the red. If when you're doing this sort of thing, when you're wiping back, because I never use turpentine, you may think, well, I can wipe it back, but I can't get the paint completely off. The way you do that is you just use a bit of oil and put it on your paper. Because oil is the thing that breaks the paint down, and when it dries it's the thing that holds it all together. So if I put a bit of oil on this cliff, it will act like a solvent, and I can take a little bit more of the colour off. I'm just trying to reveal the top of the cliff there because it's gone a little bit too vague. Maybe I'll work on that in a moment. I might repaint the top. We'll see. So here I'm going to blur the sky just there a little bit. You may not see it, it's subtle. It is blurred a bit. Okay, so very quickly now I'm going to get down to the water, and then I will come back to this later and do a few finishing touches. Okay. Right. So I'll adjust the camera so you can see what I'm doing on the water. Right, the mystery of painting the sea. First of all, you don't have to paint a beach with rolling breakers crashing on a beach. That's actually one of the hardest things to do when you're painting water. Now, because of my background in England, we get a lot of this sort of sea here, just quite calm, occasionally quite rough. But we don't do much in the way of breakers. I think the south west coast of England, around the Cornish coast and possibly parts of Devon, you will get some interesting waves. But generally, as you can see with this, by the way, this is a chalk cliff, so it tends to be the southeast of England. I think this must be somewhere I've seen somewhere, probably near the Eastbourne, Brighton coast. So it's something I'm used to, that I've seen many times. And I've never had the desire to paint big crashing waves. So this is a sort of calm, slightly mysterious type of beach. And I want to sort of keep it that way, not too threatening. And as you can see, it's actually not that difficult. The reason it's this method is so easy is that I'm actually not trying to paint waves. What I'm dealing with here is paint, not water. And I find it easier to get my mind working that I'm not reproducing the sea, I'm reproducing the feeling that the sea gives me. And as you can see, it looks reasonably wet. Not that I would particularly want to go in there and swim, because I don't swim. And before you make a comment about, oh, I could teach you to swim, experts have tried. I'm one of those people who, when I get in the water, I sink. People have said to me, just lie back, let your feet rise up. Okay, I did that. They rose up, my head didn't. And I just sink. So it's just something that I'm not going to do in this lifetime, because I want to keep this lifetime. I will stay out of the water. I'm more than happy to be on a boat with a life jacket, but I don't really want to jump in it. So, there we are. No great mystery there with the sea. Just calm waves with a little bit of highlight on them, crashing on a slightly muddy, sandy English shore, with a little bit of drama in there, I hope. Now, I appreciate that I haven't shown you how to do this from the beginning, but it's basically exactly the same as what I'm doing here. I put down yellow ochre. There's a bit of sap green in it, because when you get yellow sand in shadow on a beach, quite often the light, the shadow tone that you will get will be on the green side, depending on the time of day. So this is the green time of day for shadows on my particular beach. Okay. Very quickly over to the cliff. I'm just going to put a little bit of white down the cliff, just to sort of bring out a highlight or two, particularly on the edge there. Possibly this one here will have more light hitting the chalk. And it's going the right way. I might even make this cliff higher. Yes, one thing you have to consider when you're painting is the distances. The distance from this point to that point. So with the cliffs this sort of height, you can sort of figure out in your mind what the distance is. Do I make the cliff taller? This is the question. This is what's going on in my mind at the moment. Do I need to make it taller? Do I leave it the size that it is? I don't know. What I may do is leave this and come back to it later and give my student a chance to paint, or I will paint another demo from beginning to end. Some of you may remember my first sort of successful video is The Illusion of Detail, and I painted that about well, just over a year ago. In fact, it'll be 2 years next January, and it's very successful. If I'd known how successful it ended up, I would have taken more care on the actual painting. And as I did in the last video, I'm using red ochre, quite a lot of oil, and sap green. Whoops, here. And just mixing them up, not too thick, not too thin. I don't mind it dripping a little bit, but I don't want it to run down the picture, because if that happens, you'll find that the picture will look okay for a while, but if it is actually dripping right down and off the bottom edge of your painting, the painting will disappear. Any illusion of detail that you get into the paint will vanish. So if you feel that that's happening to your painting, the only thing to do is to lay your painting down flat so that it doesn't run, and hope for the best. So rather than have that happen, it's better to nip that in the bud and just start off where you've got the paint just at the right consistency, but it isn't dropping off the brush. First thing is to establish your horizon. So I'm going to use the rule of thirds. In other words, 2/3 sky, 1/3 landscape. And I have no idea what I'll paint, only that it will be similar to the painting. So the first thing to do is to just get some shapes. The good thing about this technique is that the brush will, I will zoom in as I'm working on this later. The brush will make the tones that you need. So if you have a hill, for instance here, and you put some trees on the top of the hill, and then you drag the brush sideways, you instantly get dark tree, well, clump of trees, and light hitting the ground underneath. I hope you can see that. I'll try and make it so that you can see it. So this is just a rolling landscape, something just to put underneath the sky. And you'll notice I'm not using the tip, I'm using the side of the brush. I'm pointing the brush at the ceiling and doing my best to keep out of the way. So all these shapes, you notice, well, you may notice, I don't know, if I just tap the brush on some of this brown here and then put it on the painting, it will put in some colour that I can use later, so that when I wipe this with a bit of paper, it'll have a reddish hue to it, which could be a field that's been recently ploughed or something like that. So with literally a sweep of your brush, you can get the effect of fields with different tones in the grass extremely quickly. So, and also what I'm doing as I'm working, I'm going to zoom in now, so if the camera shakes, I'm sorry if you get seasick. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit there, so that you can see the alleged detail quite clearly. So as I'm working, I'm continually looking at things so that I don't wipe out stuff that could be interesting. For instance, just around this area here, this could be a distant stand of trees, and these shapes here, very subtle at the moment, could be a field and a turn in the field here, or a corner, and that can be built up to come down here, just to draw the eye into the picture a bit. Just a touch of the brush and you can add the effect of trees. Now, this is by no means a finished painting. Some people will paint pictures like this and that's it, it's finished. And it's basically a monotone or duotone picture. This would be a duo because it's green and sap green and red ochre. The overall effect, though, when you've finished, is that it is very monotone. So, but it is duotone, quite subtle. So I've got the brown side of the brush here, just to get a few sort of brown tinges in the foreground. An interesting point about brown and dark colours generally, reds, blacks, very dark colours hit the retina before other colours. That is why when you paint a picture like this, and traditionally paintings like this were painted with dark in the foreground. Dark hits the eye first. That gives the illusion that this is closer than what's over there. If I just had it light down the bottom, you wouldn't have that instant effect of perspective. Now, I'm also going to show you how to put grass before I get too far. I mean, you can get grass quite quickly just by doing this. Texture. Grass is actually texture from a distance. It is not individual blades of grass. If you try to paint every individual blade of grass, you will find it frustrating and it will look cartoony and frankly amateurish. What you can do is you can put some dark colour on the painting. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. I'll adjust the camera in a second. In fact, I'll do it now. Okay, so this area of the painting here, I'm going to put some solid colour on that with a little bit more oil, not too much, just enough to make it so that I can push it around a bit. So let's just put some dark there. Now, once I've done that, how dark does that look in my camera? That's dark enough. Now you can see that the brush has already got left some lines in it, but this is not trying to look like grass because they are too mechanical. They're just batches of straight lines. The way that you can get grass in the foreground very quickly, bear in mind, if you want to study grass, go out to your garden if you have a garden, or find somewhere where there's grass growing. Look at the grass 2 feet from your feet, and you'll see how small they are. Now, a lot of people will paint great big, like giant things coming up at the bottom of the painting, like this, big blades of giant grass. I don't know what planet that's from, but it's not this one. I'm sure there are plants that look like that, but this is about grass. If you want to get the effect of grass quickly, get a piece of paper and screw it into a taper, like so. And you have to screw it really hard to make the end as solid as you can. Don't use the kitchen paper that has fluffy patterns on it and is slightly fluffy generally, because it will fall apart. This is like industrial paper. This is quite strong stuff. What I'm going to do here may seem silly, but I'm going to whip it. And this is the effect that you get. You notice I went in lots of different directions, not just up and down. Grass doesn't just do up and down. Grass is a rebel. It goes where it wants. So once your piece of paper has become quite saturated in paint, make another taper, like so, and then do a bit more whipping. It's a definite flick in the wrist. You can't just hit it. It's almost like you are whipping the painting. And I'll just do a few more. Okay, that's quite grassy. Now what you could do, you could leave this to dry, and if you are into detail, and particularly in the foreground, you can use this as your permanent drawing, and you can then get a small brush if you really feel inclined and add little bits of colour to the shapes of the grass, just to bring out the odd highlight. It's a lot quicker and it's a lot easier than using a small brush, which of course a small brush holds a very small amount of paint. So that means, you know, if you were painting this grass as I've done here, it would take you, I would think, maybe an hour or two to actually get all these shapes. And you have to admit, this looks quite natural. It's got that sort of random feel about it, and that's very important in nature. I'm just going to have a quick thrash just here, and then I'll show you the next thing you can do. Okay, and that is with a piece of paper again. Screw it into a little sort of nodule, like so. Make it nice and bumpy, lots of texture. Use your nails, pinch it a bit. Give it a bad day, make it nice and bumpy. Now, when you've got that, if you just touch that in a few places, you'll have seed pods on your grass, or flower heads, but keep moving it. Don't use the same bit twice. That will give you things that look like, well, as I said, flower heads. Let me just put one over this side, just so you can see a bit more clearly. So again, I've got my paper, making it nice and bumpy and textured, like so. Hope you can see that. And then just at the odd touch, there and there. And that's it. Now you could do that right across the whole painting. I'm not going to. I'm going to get rid of that in a minute, because that's not the look I'm after in this painting. So that's just a little preview of how to paint grass quickly. As I said, I'm going to get rid of that grass now because it's not what I want in my painting. I'm sure some people will say that I shouldn't have done it, but it's up to you. But it's a good way to show you that everything is salvageable. I can take that off with one swipe of this piece of paper, but I can also, if I want to go back again, I can do that again literally in a minute. So I'm not going to worry about it. So as I wipe off, I will wipe off carefully, looking at what I'm wiping off and deciding whether there's anything in there that I want to keep. So if I can make a texture like that, I'm more than happy at the moment. So I'll just leave that. What I could do, I could let this dry, and then I could use this colour, which is just light green, straight from the tube. Nothing like the label. The label looks quite sort of verdant, I guess, but this is it's quite a bright colour. And you can add white to it too. If you don't want to add yellow to grass to make it lighter, you add white to green to make it lighter. If you use yellow, you stop painting grass and you paint yellow grass or a yellow plant. So always bear that in mind. Look at Constable's paintings. Look at how he painted grass in the distance. He added white to it. And if it works for him, I'm more than happy for it to work for me. Right, so we'll zoom out and get back to the main part of the landscape again. So now I'm going to start working on the sky before I do any more on the landscape. And for that, I'm using white with royal blue. Not a lot of blue, and not too much oil either. And I don't want it to drip at this stage. I want it to actually stay still. I'm not worried about what happens to the horizon line, because once I've put this pale colour on the board, which you may not even be able to see, it's very, oh, I can see it in the camera. When I look at it, it's extremely pale. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I want to work the landscape and the trees into this pale blue colour. The rest of the sky will be much more dramatic in a few moments, and I don't really care how much I'm pushing the paint into the green that's there. One thing I will say that I'm doing, this light band that goes across the whole, will go across the whole painting, must not follow the landscape. The thing is, the light is millions of miles away behind the landscape, so the shape of the landscape should not affect the way the light is showing. I hope that makes sense. But basically, we just want a band across there of light. So I'm just chucking this on. This is really the only time when I use the brush pointing down. Mostly the brush, when I'm painting, is pointing at the ceiling. So I'm painting like that. However, here I want to be able to see the landscape. So I have to point the brush downwards so that I can know when to stop. All these quite interesting, intricate little shapes that are appearing along the landscape, along the top here, will disappear in a minute. I suppose I could have done the white and the blue first. It's just my personal preference. I prefer to do it this way because it actually, I suppose it gives me a little bit of thinking time, because even though I try not to think about what I'm going to paint, occasionally, okay, so here's a terrible error. I've got green in the sky. The world will end. So it won't. What I'll do is just that, and it disappears. So if there is any green in there, it'll just add a bit of interest to the painting later. So a little bit more oil. I've got a little container full of oil here. This is this clarified linseed oil. There is no drying agent in this whatsoever. I want to keep this reasonably fluid because I'm teaching, and I want to keep it fluid so that I can show my student how to make changes later. If it was just a painting for a demo on YouTube, then I probably would use a drying agent. I'm just adding a little bit more blue to this now, just a little bit at the top here. Now I've probably left a few spots on the sky here where there is no paint. Doesn't matter, I can always resolve that later on. So there we are, we've got a light bit of sky and we've completely mucked up the top edge of the landscape. It looks okay in the camera, but trust me, looking at the painting, it's a bit of a mess, but that is completely intentional. So I'm going to get my brush with sap green and red ochre again, or sludge as I call it. On the palette, not the nicest colour you'll come across. but on the painting it does actually work quite well. So I've got oil in this, but I'm not adding any more. This is not drippy. This will not, I can, whoops, the lump of paint might fall off, but the oil won't. If I hold that on there, there's no dripping of paint. So what I'm going to do is re-establish the top edges of these trees and make them a bit more interesting, and also add a little bit of perspective to the picture, I hope. We'll see. So off we go. Now, as I do this and I mix it with the sky, you'll notice things start to appear. A few distant fields across the back there. Now, at that stage, I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. I'll zoom in, but I may do that also with my editor so that you see more clearly, but I think you can possibly see it there. Now that I've started to push the landscape into the sky here, I've actually picked up some paint on the brush. I don't want that, so I'm going to just wipe it off a little bit. It doesn't have to completely come off, it's just so that there's so little on there it won't transfer to the painting. And the next thing I'm going to do is pick up some more of this colour so that I can add stuff to the painting without it disappearing too much into the sky colour. So I'm going to leave that gap in between this lump of trees and this. Just checking you can actually see what I'm pointing at. A little bit of zooming back, I think. There, you can see everything now. So between these 2 points here, I'm going to leave that. I'll go back to it in a minute. What I want to do here with some strong colour is establish this lump of trees on the top of the hill here, or maybe just a bunch of trees, who knows. There's actually tree trunks in there without me doing much. I don't know whether you can see them. It's just the shape of the bristles in here. I can make them a little bit more obvious. That's if I keep this as a lump of trees. I don't know, I might not. Maybe I will, who knows. I'm very unpredictable today. So I could just enhance them a bit and just add a few tree trunks in there. Doesn't matter if they go up in the sky, because they do. I could actually add some spindly trees to the top there, but I may not bother. What I might do, this is just for me to show you how to add this tree trunk effect reasonably quickly. I'll leave it for now, but I might take it off. So I want to get back to this top edge here, assuming you can see it. Yeah, you can. So, as I said before, I'm not adding any more oil. This is basically sap green. Trying to do this without obscuring your view as usual. And maybe I'll turn that into, I think that should be a hill. I'm going to make that into a hill, so it's going to be a little bit misty at the top. So with just a few brush strokes and a very big brush, of course this is the smallest brush I'll be using on this painting, unless I use one of these just for the odd tree in the foreground, or mid-ground, not the foreground. But for now, it's going to be this one. So, a bit more green. Not too much. So, as you probably know by now, the thing that interests me in paintings, sounds lazy this, but apart from doing the absolute minimum to get the effect that I want, I am looking for texture and drama. I'm just going to go back to the horizon line very quickly here. I quite like what's happening over this side, and as I said earlier, I'll try and zoom in. a little later so you can see what's going on. But I need to, rather than just have that flat through there, it's always good to get a little bit of something going on. And by something, I'm talking about blobs. Just a few shapes in there. Got a bit of pale colour on the brush, as you can see, right along that top edge, so I could use that down here just to break up some of these dark shapes and then start pushing them up to give another line of perspective. And then the bottom edge, quick swipe across just to clean them up. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my student so that she can catch up with roughly where I am, and then I will come back in a minute and I'll show you what I'm going to do in this area, and then we'll get on to the dramatic sky. Okay, so one of the things that people do ask a lot is, how do I paint water? Well, on here at the moment I've got this white area, and in fact if you look at it and just sort of let your eyes go slightly out of focus on it, it almost looks like some of this is a reflection in a very light coloured patch of water. Maybe the sky is the same colour. So it's sort of halfway to becoming water. To make it more watery, if I was going to have it as water, and I'm not sure that I will, I would probably bring this line down here and do something like this. Just check I'm not completely in the way. Good. And just do that. And it now looks as though there's a bit more of a reflection. I don't particularly want to do water there, but I'm just dithering at the moment, wondering whether that's what I will go towards. But I don't think I will. I think I'm going to go for foliage. I'll do another video that's just water in the not too distant future. And I have several paintings with water, and in fact I might insert a picture at this point showing you one of the latest ones that I have done with water. So I'll give you a moment to look at that. That's long enough, you don't want to overindulge. And down here, I'm just going to fill this with a bit of green. Could be still water, but it's very green water. So anyway, it's not water. I'm going to get some brown in there now. Just get some texture. And get it as simple as I can. I'm going to just completely sweep across the front there. Have a look at that. That's quite interesting because it's made this quite bland here, and it seems to bring interest to that part of the painting where there's a bit of texture. And this brown piece here, I know from experience that if I just add a little bit of light to the top edge of that, that's going to look like a slight change in the angle of the ground, so that this bit here, now I'm trying to think, it looks as though it's dropping away slightly. So maybe I'll work on that. Just put a bit of light above it, increase the light just there. Yep. So I'm after changes of planes. And it seems to be okay. We've got one plane over there in the background. Then the ground seems to be quite flat, he said, hitting it with his finger. These trees just here in the middle, they may go, because I think they're slightly out of scale, although they could be little bushes. But then I quite like the transition between there and there. It's quite a nice change. And the more you can do that in a painting, to increase the interest, the better it comes. I'll do a little trick here where you put it like a shape to lead people around. I'm just going to add that. how that looks in the camera. Okay, it's not quite what I wanted, if I'm absolutely honest with you. Well, I'm being buzzed by something that sounds like a bee at the moment, so I'll just bravely keep going. There we are, it's gone away. Okay, so I'm reasonably happy with this at the moment. However, this bunch of trees here, I always say that, bunch of trees, it's not a bunch. You have a bunch of flowers. This is a small wood, or a copse, or a thicket, and I'm just not totally happy with it. However, I'm going to change that in a minute. If I do it now, I may have to demolish it again for when I work on the sky. So I'll just leave that there for a minute. Now I'm going to try and make the sky slightly more interesting. And for that, I'm going to use a new brush, well, no, not a completely new brush, but a brush that's got a little bit of blue on it. It doesn't really matter that it's got white in it. I'll just give it a quick wipe. And just as a reminder, no turpentine, just paper. If you've lasted this long in the video, thank you for staying with me this long. Not many people do. I think occasionally people fall into a coma and are unable to watch the entire video. But if you're awake now, well done. I guarantee you'll be awake. I guarantee you'll be asleep later. Anyway, let's keep going. I know that the people that have lasted this long really do have the urge to learn how to paint. Okay, so onto the sky, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use phthalo blue. If you are in France, it's not just called phthalo blue. I'm sure not all of you are in France, as most of my followers seem to be in America. But it's a heck of a word, phthalo blue. I mean, even in English, it's pthalo, pthalo. I'm not sure why they came up with that, but in French, it's I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's phtalocyane. No idea. Anyway, so I won't bother. Moving on. Oil, not too much, mixed with phthalo blue. I'm not using any white on here, I'm just going to use blue. And when I've put that on, I'm going to also put on some Payne's grey, because I can't live without it. Got to have my dose of Payne's grey. Okay, so very carefully apply the blue to your surface. For this, I'm just throwing the paint on. My brush appears to be in the molting season. It tends to come and go with the seasons. The brushes start to lose hair. I don't know whether it's because they're entering the mating phase or whether it's just that they're falling apart. I suspect it's falling apart. So I'll just check before I continue. That's better. Okay, so now I'm putting the blue on, as I keep repeating here. There is no plan at the moment. All I want to do is cover the white, and I'll show you a little trick in a minute for a certain type of sky before I actually do the finished sky. So you imagine you're going to paint a sky, and you paint all this blue, and you think, now if I'm going to put white clouds on that, it's going to mix with the blue, and any white I put on there will just end up as pale blue. And that is exactly what would happen. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that. And it's a very useful little trick. A little bit more oil. So there's my sky. I'm not even bothering with dark at the top, light at the bottom. Oh dear, this brush definitely has got alopecia. Okay, try again. In a minute I'll get to the light area that I put on earlier, and I can just push the two colours together like so. So this is just for people who well, these few moments are for people who want to paint cumulus nimbus, I think they're cumulus nimbus clouds, the type that look like a giant cauliflower in the sky. Okay, so I'll just stop there for that level. So a way to do it is this. If you want to plan out where your clouds are going to go, you can do this method. I will be undoing this in a minute because it's not the way that I would do this. You can then decide that you want clouds with round, bobbly bits, and you can wipe away where the cloud will go. Showing up? Yes, good. So what I'm actually doing by wiping away like this, see a newer piece of paper, a bit of harder wiping, it gets lighter. It won't go completely to white unless I add oil to it, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to show the basics of what I'm explaining. So as you can see, that could be a white cloud. Now because I've wiped off the paint here, I can add white to this bit without it mixing too much with the blue. If I tried to do it on this bit here, it would just end up as mush. By wiping away first, let's do a little bit more. Supposing, just get rid of that hair there. Supposing we were going to have another big cloud here. You get through a lot of paper doing this. And then another, you see it starting to form the shape of clouds. That's one way of doing it. Okay? Makes sense. Yeah? So that's not what I'm going to do. That's just for a bit of information. So I'm going to lose that now. Like so. Okay. So now it's lighter, then it's dark, then there's a dark streak across here. Doesn't matter. Just spread it a little bit. Just makes it a little bit more interesting. If you want to be, you know, the perfectionist about the sky at this stage, it's possibly, in my opinion, only my opinion, so there will be people who will disagree, but in my opinion, this is too early on in the painting to start making it dark, gradually getting lighter. Because if you look up at a blue sky, as it's above your head, it's darker. When you look down towards the horizon, it gets lighter. So I personally think it's too soon to really get bogged down in that side of things. So what I'm going to do, when I find the brush, here it is just take away some of the brush marks. It's going to be a long video. So if I just smooth it a little bit, this is putting a lot of blue paint on the brush, of course, so I'm going to be taking that off. I don't have to take all of it off, just enough so that I don't end up spreading paint everywhere. This is a flattening process, and that's all. And it's also getting rid of the odd bristle process. Okay, so let's just do a few more swipes through the paint. Okay, how's that looking? Reasonable. I'd also like to say at this point, a lot of people are mentioning that in one of my videos I said the brushes are so cheap that they're hardly worth cleaning. I do clean my brushes now. I know I was a naughty boy. Shouldn't have even said it, but some people got quite aggressive about it. So let's all calm down. I clean my brushes, even though they are so cheap. They throw them at you as you walk in the shop. Okay. Right, I'm not interested in what happens just down there, because that's going to be subject to change. That's all I'm going to do for the bottom part of the sky. Okay, so now we get to the magic bit. This is the bit I really enjoy. But before I get to it, I have to get as much of the paint off this as possible, because I don't want it to be a brush, I want it to be a spreader in a minute. And that will come clear when you see what I'm going to do next. So this is the bit where you really need to concentrate. If you struggle with skies, whatever you do, don't blink, because this will be over very quickly. All it is white, just white paint. I've got my blue base on the sky, and all I'm going to do is just make shapes. Now, I don't want the paint to be too thick. There's quite a lot of paint on the palette knife here, if it's focusing, I don't know, hope so. But when I put it on the board, I don't want to have any mountains up there. So I will sort of try and spread it as evenly as I can. And for this one, I'm going to make the clouds come down this way for a change. Quite often they go this way. If you are right-handed, chances are you will make skies go off like this. It's just the natural way that the arm works. If you're left-handed, you're more likely to do it this way, I think. Yeah? I think so. My student is left-handed, so I'm both, and I get very confused as to what each hand does sometimes. As there's a saying, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. Well, actually, I find that quite easy, because even I have no idea sometimes. So this would be, I think, a left-handed sky. And the other, talking of skies, I went out the other evening and I was looking at some clouds just to see what the sunset was like. And it was definitely a sky of a right-handed person. Everything went up that way. And it tends to be that happens more often than not. But anyway, so this is, now the reason I didn't bother blending this bottom line here is because I didn't need to, because I'm going to be doing this, which will break up the transition between the two, like so. So a little word or two about the frame of mind that it's good to try and adopt when you're painting. And I'll be repeating this probably on most of my videos. There is a saying, dance as if nobody is watching. Now personally that doesn't work for me, because you don't want to see me dance. I have no sense of rhythm. I never dance. I haven't danced for years because it's just too embarrassing. You can't have everything, I suppose. But they say dance as if nobody's watching. So that what it means, of course, is be completely free. Don't worry about what anyone thinks. Now, I can do that with painting, because I don't mind how many people are standing next to me watching. It has no effect on what I'm painting. In fact, I quite like an audience, probably because I don't know. Well, I know somebody will say, "Oh, you've got a big head." Okay, well that's fine. I don't mind. I'm just sort of confident in what I'm doing. That's all. It's no. I don't intend to show off. That's not my reason for being here. My reason for being here is to teach you how to paint. Okay, so there we are. There's some clouds, and you may think, well, yeah, fine. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. They are not clouds. Well, funnily enough, I agree. They aren't. I'm not trying to make clouds. Like I'm not trying to make a landscape. I'm trying to make the effect the landscape has on the viewer. Okay, so that's all I need to do for this sky. Just kidding, of course. What I have to do next is use this brush here and turn that into a sky. So before I get going though, I need to get more of this. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it into a sky. I need at least 2 pieces of this in my hand. I mean, you're not learning anything about paper on this. It's just me rambling on while I get ready to start turning my blobs into a sky. So here we go, nice and fast. Bearing in mind I'm using the side of the brush, not the tip. And it's just a question of all different directions at once. A few swipes and then stop. Wipe your brush, get all the residue off that you can, and then go back to the painting and then swipe in a different direction a few times. You notice how the sky here is starting to look very nicely blended. Looks as though someone has spent hours with a very expensive soft brush. and that is not the case. This is not actually a soft brush, it's quite strong bristle. It's actually a mixture of bristle and nylon. I'd prefer if it was all bristle, but they're getting harder to get. Okay, so even more, you can see how much it takes to get blue off, blue being one of the most powerful colours. And barely touching the painting. If I use any more pressure, it'll just turn into a sort of pale blue mush. And we don't want that. Now here, there's a bit of build-up of paint, and I'll show you how to handle that. What you do is you get a palette knife, and you get it as clean as possible. And then you put it on the part where you've got the build-up of paint, as flat as you can get it on there, and just push it around a bit. That will spread the colour a little bit. It will muck up your sky momentarily, but that doesn't matter. Okay, there's a slight build up there, but it's not anything to worry about. This was definitely the worst spot. So now that I've basically used the palette knife on it flat like that and sort of ironed it flat, I can now go over it again with this, and now there aren't any mountains of paint. I'll attempt to zoom in on the editor later. Okay, so there we are. This is at this stage pretty well almost it. I quite like things like this that happen in a painting. These lines here, I don't know, some people say it looks like a contrail. Doesn't particularly look like a contrail here, but even if it does, I'm not that worried. Not too concerned. So, and if I decide I don't want them, just use the corner of the brush to break it up a little bit and then swipe over it again, and then you'll lose any lines that are too long. Any lines that you put in a painting that are too long and perfect, by the way, imply something that is man-made or machine-made, and I don't want that in any of my paintings. I like to go for the natural look, even though my cat or me has managed to get a hair in the painting. There we go. So I made a mess getting rid of the hair, but I can fix it easily just with a couple of wipes, the brush. Okay. Now this video has gone on for quite a long time. I'm going to have to do a lot of editing, I think, to speed it up a little bit. So I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you do like it, please hit the subscribe button. Next to the subscribe button, you'll see a little bell icon, and if you click on that, you'll know when I next upload a video. It's very important for YouTubers to get as many subscribers as possible, because that's how we earn our money. The more subscribers, and particularly those who keep watching, not just subscribe, but actually keep watching the videos, it helps us to survive and supplies us with money so we can feed our cats or dogs. And I have a Patreon page. Everybody knows what that's for. Help yourself to chuck piles of money at that. If you do, wonderful, thank you. If you don't, never mind. In fact, I'm rambling on here about going, and I'm not going yet because I've just seen something that I need to change. So let's but don't forget what I just said. You know, it's important to, for me anyway, if you do subscribe. Bear in mind also, every now and then I give away a free painting or two. You won't get one unless you've it sounds like blackmail, but if you've subscribed, at least I'll know you exist. If you don't subscribe, I won't have a list of you anywhere. So I always work from the subscription list. So if you want the chance of a painting, you have to hit that subscribe button. It does sound like coercion, but it's not intended to be. I'm just wandering around the studio here looking for a brush. Oh, there it is, right in front of me. So I'm just going to do something with this area here, because I just don't like what I've got there at the moment, and then that will really be the end of the video. And quite frankly, if you are still here, I'm very impressed. Okay, so this, I threw this on here just as a quick demonstration for my student, and it was just to show how easy it is to put in a few light coloured tree trunks. Now, I might keep some of them, but I'm not happy with the top. I think it looks a bit strange. So I'm going to see what I can do with that. Mostly green. There's a lot of white in the background with the sky, so it will mix with the green. And I think I will just make it a little bit larger than life. I have to account for the fact of where it is in the picture. So it's closer than this, and it's closer than that, much closer than that. It is also closer than this line of trees. But there is a danger that it's going to be out of scale. The way I can bring it into scale is to increase the height on the top, but also increase the depth. That will bring it down to a part of the picture where it is believable that it is that size. I hope that makes sense. So the first thing I'm going to do is the top of the trees. Like so. Reasonably happy with that. And then the other end of the brush, that's the light end there that I just used. So I'll use the other end and get some green on it, and then bring the bottom of the trees down to this line approximately here. There. I have to keep looking in the camera, make sure you can see what I can see. Okay. So I'm not worried about losing the tree trunks because I can put them back. So I'm just going to bring this down a bit lower and increase the darkness slightly at the bottom, because the underside of the tree is always going to be in shadow. The top will have the light on it, the bottom will have the shadow. Now at the beginning I think I said I was going to use Payne's grey in this picture. I haven't actually used it. I will probably do a follow-up, and I know, I'm sorry it takes some time when I do say that I'm making follow-ups because of pressure of work, but I will do something on this because I want to add more colour to the sky, and also a few other things that probably could do with a bit of work on. Like for instance, I just want to strengthen that a little bit there because it looked a bit weak. And now that I've got some darkness down here, I will add a few tree trunks to that. And the way I'm going to do this, I wish I hadn't said goodbye so early. I'll have to say goodbye again in a minute. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just disappear. Anyway, a few tree trunks and then I'm going to stop. And I do promise that I will be back much sooner next time. I left quite a big gap between videos. It's all to do with the amount of work I've got. I can only actually do so much. So there's a few tree trunks. Never do tree trunks dead straight because they'll look like telegraph poles. Always have a bit of a bend in them, a little bit of a wiggle, because that's what trees do. So there's a few tree trunks. Now there was a bit of a pause at that point because I decided that I wasn't giving my student enough time on her painting. So this is actually 2 days later, maybe getting close to 3 days later. It's dried off quite a lot. The blue here is certainly dry. Some of the white in the sky is a little bit wet, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to be working on the sky and intensifying the clouds just a little bit. I'm also going to work here a little bit more because I still think that that could be a little bit bigger, and also maybe I'll increase it a little bit to the right hand side. It's quite in the middle at the moment and I don't really like that, so I had a little think. Anyway, so the course went very well. Petra, my student, is now back in Sweden, and I hope you're watching this video. It was a pleasure to have met you and to teach you. And I have to say, Petra is a very, very good artist. I will insert one of her paintings just about now. And as you can see, not bad at all. Not bad at all. And in fact, I looked on her Facebook page and saw some other paintings, some really nice pictures of flowers and plants and things, and quite a good variation of stuff. And I was very impressed. So Okay, so what was I going to do? I'm going to increase the tree clump a little bit. So it's a clump now. It was a thicket, and it was a copse, and it was a bunch, but it's a clump now. So I'm going to again, as usual, same brush. In fact, I haven't even cleaned it since the last session. So it's still nice and pliable because it's quite a slow drying oil. So I'm just going to increase the trees a little bit to the right. As I work into the sky, as you can see there, it's mixing in slightly, not too much. Don't want it to actually change all that much. And then I'm going to just add a bit more to the right there, just to give it a bit more presence on the picture. And that may be almost it. Just feather the top slightly. Slightly different species from the other trees. Yeah, maybe I'll leave. I might lighten it, but who knows? Depends how I feel. So that we've got our hill here. Don't think I'll do much to that. I think what I'm going to do is just concentrate down here a bit more and get a few slightly darker tones in this area, just to give it a bit of variation. There's a little bit of brown going into that, which is good. That's what I want. Just a little darker bit there. Oh, and I have to say, I apologise for saying goodbye so early in this video. That's sort of embarrassing, really. I thought I was coming to the end, and then of course, you know, when I'm painting, particularly when I'm teaching, funnily enough, I get a little bit hyper, and I guess I just jumped the gun a bit. Anyway, we're back on it. So anyway, how many videos do you get to watch where the person says goodbye twice? That's extra. Well, one way of looking at it, it's slightly extra value to your video. What else do I need to do? I think on the landscape that may almost be it. I think we'll have a little bit of a bush or two just there, and possibly a little bit more darkness just down the foreground here. Just to give it a little bit more punch in the foreground, and a little bit there. A bit more green on that. There's a nice lump of brown there, but I don't think I want it. Oh, one thing that I was telling Petra is, when you do a landscape like this, if you do a lot of little humpy shapes, in other words, if you do a clump of bushes somewhere and you do it like a little island, and then you do another one, say here, and then another one, say over here somewhere, it can look as though they're sort of plopped on afterwards. The thing about a landscape, particularly with a vista like this, which is quite a wide expanse of countryside, it's best to keep your lines reasonably long and sweepy and horizontal. That'll give the feeling of an expanse rather than carefully designed little weed bunches, tree weeds. Anyway, so here we go, a few more touches just over there, just to add a little bit of contrast. Simplify some of the shapes down a bit, like so. And I think, sorry about that beep, that's my computer telling me something. And then over here I've got quite a lump of brown just there, and someone else is telling me something. So I'm going to turn that into a few bushes just to break up the brown a little bit. My goodness, we're busy today. Okay. That means that someone on Facebook is telling me something. Okay, I think a little bit there. Just you see, I'm not actually constructing trees. I'm just putting in. I'm trying to put in suggestions that there could be something going on there. My goodness. Usually when I get a cluster of beeps on my computer, it's usually from one person. So anyway, okay, so there we've got a little line of something along the edge there. And I'm just going to add a little bit more white to the sky. And then I think that really will be it. and then I'll say goodbye again. So again, for the palette freaks, that's just what I've been doing from that, just these two colours. The usual sap green, red ochre. So now I'm going to start playing with a bit of white paint. So the first thing I'll do with the palette knife, nothing on the palette knife at the moment, there is still a bit of a build up here. I'm just going to squish it a bit and push it and see what happens. It's a little bit, yeah, actually that would be quite a nice effect, I think, by the time I've finished with it. A little bit of light on the sky. There's another bit there, so I'll just break that down a little bit. It's quite gooey, but it's still pliable. I can still sort of move it. And there is a hair there, which is now an X hair. Now it's left a mark in the paint, so what I'll do, not that you'll see it, I'll just add a little bit of cloud here, and I'm going to repeat myself. Don't forget, with the clouds, take them off the edge of the picture. Let's move my arm out of the way. You've probably had enough of my arm and my shoulder to last a lifetime, so I'll do my best to keep it out of the way. It's actually easier to do it in my studio, the keeping out of the way thing, because where I was painting there was plenty of room and I could sort of move around a lot, which of course with me will encourage me to move around, and then I get into this sort of hyper state when I'm painting, and then I forget that I'm videoing and I get in the way. But here I've got to be a little bit careful, because if I back up too much I'll hit the wall, or even the table in front of the wall where all my paints are kept and stuff. It would be colourful. Okay, so we've got a nice sort of bit of cloud coming across there. It's a little bit straight on the top, so I'm going to just go up a bit there. Make it a bit unpredictable. And then on the whites that I've got, I'll just do the odd touch, and then in a minute I'm going to go over it with a dry brush, not necessarily a big one, but just a dry brush, to do a little bit of the magic smudging, which is good fun. Sometimes I'm as surprised as anyone else at the results. It always produces a bit of a surprise effect. I know roughly what it'll be like, but it's well, I just find it exciting. Of course, that could show what a sad, miserable life I've got if that's the only thing I find exciting, but there are other things. There we are. Now, this is looking more the way I would have expected it to look. I'm going to put a little bit up here, tiny bit more on the edge. This sort of painting, I hope, helps you realise that you can relax when you're painting. You don't have to be you don't have to try and be too careful sometimes well, often, not just sometimes, to get things in the right place. A lot of it comes down to instinct and memory. I think I've looked at so many clouds. I have a good built-in memory of clouds. So that's a start. So the next thing I'm going to do is find a nice big soft brush, and I know there's one over here. Rummaging sounds. Now this isn't as big as the giant brush that I use. I could use it, but I'm going to try it with this one. This is quite small, considering when you look at it next to the painting. It's quite a small brush, really. Just check for loose bristles, seems to be okay. And I'm just going to soften them a bit, like so. Reasonable. Add a tiny, and when I say tiny, I mean really small amount of oil. I would say 1/8 of a thimbleful, if you can imagine that. Okay, hardly any paint, just enough to get it moving. All different directions. Tiny bit more oil on it. Pretty well it. How many times have I said that in this video? So as I do really, and I'm not kidding this time, I'm really coming to the end. I will again repeat something I said earlier. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I just want to put a bit more grey there. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you're interested in coming here for a course, if the planet ever opens up again for that sort of thing, I'm sure it will. Well, we can all hope, can't we? You'll find a link in the description box below about my courses. That'll take you to my website. If you go to the retreats, in fact I put the link straight to the retreats section, so you can start there and you can get the information from that page. As you scroll down, you will see a bit of text that just says PDF, I think. If you click on that, you can download the PDF. It'll tell you about the venue and a lot of all the information you need, really. Cost, I think even how to get there might be on there, and if it isn't there, I'll put it there. The place where the venue is held is called Le Quatre Puits. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's run by a couple of guys, very nice chaps, and they are, I have to say, extremely good chefs. The food that I was given there, I had dinner one night and lunch for the other 5, and it was unbelievable. It's all vegan, which suits me perfectly, and it was absolutely delicious. There we go. I think we're there. I'm going to stop at this point really now, and yeah, I'll see you on the next video. And get painting. Feel free to send paintings that you've done to my Facebook page. Now, it may take me a while to reply, but I'll reply as quickly as I can, and because I'm quite busy. Just seen something I don't like there, apart from my hair. Just want to soften that spot a little bit, and the one below it. And there goes my computer again. I could edit out all these sounds, but I think it adds a little bit of realism. Life goes on while I paint. Okay, and I'll give you a full frontal view of what it looks like. Bye for now, see you on the next video.